Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello and welcome back to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini, and as always, I am joined by my colleague over at the Hockey Writers, Julian Mongillo. Unfortunately, Alex Hobson is dealing with some technical difficulties with his internet because, that's the day and age we live in right now. Technology, one step forward, two steps back. Before we get started with the show, Julian, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. We'll have a two-man show, but we'll look to carry the load, and hopefully Alex will be back with us shortly. But I got my next gen jersey. Alex got his. I love these things. Just a new kind of look, and I don't know, they're even nicer in person. So shout out to my girlfriend for the gift, and I love it.
Beautiful. I don't know what the hate was with that. I don't know why I was getting some backlash. It's nice. I love black and blue, the good combination, and also the yellow just kind of reminds me of the Super Mario Star feel. So, it's a win for me no matter what, but I'm probably going to wear the black and blue side most of the time anyways. And yeah, so we are down Alex, two-man show, but it'll be like that 2-on-1 with Pierre Engvall scoring against the Philadelphia Flyers, in case you saw that game. Good reference there by me. If not, whatever. Before we start the show, this week's show is, as always, brought to you by morningskate.io, the daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday from the Hockey Writers. It is jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet, your one-stop shop for news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc., etc., etc. Great newsletter. You should definitely sign up with it. All you got to do is type in your email and you are good to go, and it'll come straight to your inbox. So I guess, it is fitting to start off this show with the big news that happened this week. Auston Matthews, it was inevitable. It was supposed to happen 2 years ago, derailed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. He was at 47 goals, delayed, lost out to the Rocket by 1, was on pace on a ridiculous scoring pace last season, only ended up with 41 or 42. I would have to go back and check that. But again, phenomenal pace. But this time, the third time's the charm, 50 goals for Auston Matthews. He set that mark, scoring an empty net goal against the Winnipeg Jets. Not the goal that we had all hoped, but you know what? A goal is a goal. We wanted to see him snipe top corner from his office, but you know what? It is what it is. And with that, he scored his 51st against the Philadelphia Flyers recently. So in that instance, he is now tied with both Rick Vaive and Gary Leeman from Vaive 82-83 season and Gary Leeman's 89-90 season with 51 goals. One back of Rick Vaive's 83-84 mark, two back of Dave Andreychuk's 93-94, and three back of Rick Vaive's 54 goals by a Maple Leaf player. The record, for the time being, is there for Rick Vaive's, but records are meant to be broken, and Matthews is there. Julian, your take on him reaching the mark? It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the most difficult things to do, especially in this day and age where, it seems like the last few or in the past, it was difficult to reach that 50 goal mark and it was very rare. But now it looks like it's going to be another consistent factor going forward with Matthews.
Yeah. They don't ask how, they ask how many. So however they come, Matthews will take them to put him back in the back of the net. He's been on the cusp of 50 for a long time, and knocking on the door to be, it always seemed to kind of have something to prevent him from doing it. So it's good to see him finally crack it, and it's great to see a Leaf player that's probably in the top 5 players in the league. We haven't really had that in a while, if at all. So it's just great to see that energy that he can provide, knowing that he can score from anywhere on the ice at any point in time. He should have had probably 2 or 3 goals in that game and had to settle for the empty netter. But like I said, they don't ask how, they ask how many. And I think that he'll be I think he's going to pass Vive's all-time record for franchise record. And I'll go out on a limb and say that he's going to hit 61 goals, and that's what he'll finish with on the season. So he's just an animal right now, and he's working every little piece of that ice. And as long as Mitch Marner's dishing him the puck, like we saw yesterday against the Flyers, that nice pass from behind the net, like these guys are one of the duos that are going to be hard to stop. And I wouldn't be surprised if Matthews hit 60.
Already, he surpasses goal total from 2019-20 with 47, had 41 last season. He was on pace for 63 in 2020-21, 56 in 2019-20, on pace for 61 this season. We know how much of a great goal scorer he is. I mean, there's no denying about that. Even early on in his career, when he scored 40, 34, 37 in his first 3 seasons, we knew that he was something special. But the fact that he's able to do this while still being a top tier centerman, playing a very strong defensive game, coming back on the back check, breaking up plays, creating turnovers. The fact that he's able to do this all while playing a strong 2-way steady game like a number 1 center should is absolutely phenomenal. And there's a talk about him for the Hart Trophy MVP. I mean, it goes to the most valuable player, and the fact that he's able to prioritize or have a very strong defensive game and still not have his offensive output and hampered by that, it shows that he is a really dominant player and one of the top players in this league at this point. And this isn't just us because we're a Maple Leaf show. I mean, this is just fact. I mean, if Matthews was doing this on another team, whether it was Tampa Bay, Boston, Florida, what have you, I would probably be saying the same thing right now. And the fact that he's able to do this, hit the goal mark, and you mentioned too that he's closing in on Vive's record. There's still quite a few games left. He's only 3 back from tying it, 4 from surpassing it. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And even though that the schedule upcoming, it looks a little bit tough because he's got back-to-back games against Tampa and Florida, anything is possible because of his shot, and it's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, well, even too, like you said about the defensive game, it's we see McDavid, he cracks 100 points, but I don't know, to me, defensively, and I do the Oilers, I contribute to the Oilers as well. Defensively, I don't know if I see as a dominant of a presence from Matthews defensively as I do when I watch McDavid. McDavid is the most skilled player in the league by far, and most dynamic, and he can change a game no matter what. And Matthews is the same way. But the fact that you don't often see a centerman in that upper echelon that's scoring goals and being that good defensively. Usually it's the assist or the playmaker because he's defensively responsible, contributing to breakout passes, stuff like that. But it's he's up and down that ice in an instant, and as long as he can get that puck on his stick and get that whip going with it, then it's dangerous. And his creativity too. It's great to see him kind of contribute and continue to build different aspects of his game. And I think that's the biggest difference, is you're seeing that defensive style that's coming through, but it's not taking away from his goal output.
Yeah, when you think of a 2-way center, you think of, you think of a player like Andre Kopitar or Jonathan Toews, Patrice Bergeron, players that put up more assists than they do goals. And the fact that Matthews is doing that, again, given the role that he's at as a top line center, again, just shows how great of a player he is, prioritizing that defensive game at this point. And I just want to throw out another stat out there, and I saw this on Bar Down just recently before we started the show. Auston Matthews is the first NHL player to put up 44 goals in a 46-game stretch. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. Our last player to do that was Mario Lemieux in 95-96. So setting history not only in the Maple Leafs record books, but also matching an impeccable goal-scoring streak or pace that Mario did back in the mid-90s. And the fact that we're seeing that right now with Matthews, again, it's absolutely phenomenal. There is no other way to put it. We witnessed history last year with both his scoring pace and McDavid's, point totals. Great all around for both players. But this is going to be a year where maybe we see another player maybe crack 60. And I think the last player to do that was Steven Stamkos, if I'm not mistaken. Again, 50 is difficult. 60 is even more challenging. And if there's one player to do it, it is going to be Matthews. Moving on to the next topic, it probably would have been the best news that Maple Leafs fans would have heard, aside from Matthews scoring 50 goals, but it was the return of Jack Campbell. We heard earlier in the week that he wasn't that far off. Unfortunately, we saw Peter Mrazek go down against the Boston Bruins. Timeline is 6 weeks. I believe it is a groin injury, and that's just very tough to hear, given what he's endured early on in the season. And right now, the fact that he's missing quite a bit of time, it's difficult. But the good news is Campbell is on the mend. He is back. And in that game against the Philadelphia Flyers, it looked like we saw the Jack Campbell early on in the season and the Jack Campbell that was an all-star. Julian, what was your take of his return in that game?
Well, yeah, kudos to Källgren for kind of holding the fort down. Even it's unfortunate for Mrazek to, have him go down again. It's just been, one thing after another this season. I'm not even sure it's possible we may have seen him in his last game as a Leaf, because I don't think they're going to be, unless there's another injury to Campbell, that they're going to put him back in the playoffs. It's unfortunate. It looked like a nothing play for Mrazek too, like just routine type of, didn't even look like he stretched too far. And that the groins are difficult, so hopefully he can come back and be as good as he was before he got hurt again. But as for Campbell, I mean, this is kind of what we needed, a little bit of a reset. We kind of spoke about it in past episodes, and it looks like he's kind of, something that was bothering him looks to be, past that now. And looks like his usual self in the crease. I think he was good for the most part of the game. Can't really fault him for any of the goals. That first one was definitely right across the crease there, and some bad defensive coverage. Brody kind of chases the puck high and and creates that opportunity for them on one of them too. So solid performance. I think this is kind of why Dubas probably didn't go out and address this, because he put the faith and the trust in Campbell that he'll be okay. And Källgren's gotten the job done too when he's been called upon. So I mean, the Leafs can kind of score with anybody in the league and keep up offensively. So as long as they can get mediocre to good goaltending, I think that they'll be in good shape. And it's good to see Campbell come back, and they have a tough stretch here, so they're going to need him against some tough teams in the Atlantic to keep pace. They're second in the division right now, so they're hoping to keep that home ice.
Yeah, and early on in the game too, I mean, he made some fantastic saves, and even later on, it kind of seemed like, it was a tale of kind of two Campbells, where maybe at one point it would be a Campbell where he would make a save or make that save and it would just be a highlight reel save, or it would get by him. And as a result of the injury that we noticed with his ribs, Campbell was on top of it. We didn't see any panic. We didn't see any nerves in the crease or any sudden movements where he was second guessing himself. He was out of position, or it was a goal that he should have had. No. And you nailed it on the head. Two of those goals were absolute, defensive lapses. One goal went off of David Kamp's leg, and you really can't fault him on any of the three. On the stat sheet, it's like, oh no, Campbell gave up 3 goals. The experiment's over. No, it's not. He looked phenomenal in that. It was great to see that composure from him, that poise, the calmness that he brought before the injury and the inconsistencies that we saw this season. And you also mentioned Dubas having faith in Campbell. I think we've always had faith in Campbell. It's just we thought that at this point, it was a little bit of a concern because the goaltending was happening at the worst possible time. But seeing him come back and taking this time off and regrouping and healing up was the best thing for him. And we saw what happened when you play through an injury last year with Frederik Andersen. It can be very bad. And the fact that we were in a tough spot, we held the fort, especially with Erik Källgren and Mrazek before he went down with his injury, was a really good sign. And the fact that we had the Campbell that we know and love that was able to come in and stop the bleeding and put up a performance when his team was very slow to start just shows that we have the goaltender that we need going forward. Once again, to recap the show, or actually, I'm going to scratch that. There's actually one more thing that we should talk about before I recap the show. Nick Abruzzese made his NHL debut last night. And as always, it is tradition for the rookie to get the first lap. And we hear Mitch at the beginning from the Maple Leafs Twitter account. He's just like, Nick, let's go. Telling him to get out there and take that lap. It's always a great scene to see. But one of the collegiate free agents or draft picks that the Maple Leafs signed that was in college, Signed him to a 2-year entry-level contract. And what were your initial thoughts on him? Granted that, we talked about the play time for Abruzzese and possibly Knies down the line, where maybe it won't be as great given the fact that they will be playing fourth line minutes. But overall, in his first game, what did you make of him?
I thought he was okay. I didn't really see anything that kind of stood out to me to say, this guy's going to we need to keep him in the lineup. I think he can kind of get into the forecheck more a little bit. They were shuffling the lines at points in the game too. So he kind of lost his kind of feel in the lineup there for a little bit. So it's a tough kind of situation. It's his first NHL game. So I'm not going to read too much into it. I still think that they're better off running with the guys they have on the roster rather than throwing a younger guy in. That said, I would rather have Spezza in the lineup. I love Blackwell in the lineup. I think when Cash is healthy, you probably don't need guys like Abruzzese or Clifford or even Simmons at some points. So I think that my ideal fourth line is Spezza, Blackwell, and you could throw Abruzzese in there, but Cash is going to be back in the lineup, I think, by the playoffs. So I think that you kind of have your idea, unless you need some physicality to inject with Simmons and Clifford. You can always go that route. But I mean, like I said, I'd rather see them kind of mature in the minors. I think that he'll probably continue to get a couple of looks just to kind of feel him out. But I think I would rather either have, like Spezza in the lineup, or, I would try him with a more creative player like Spezza. Maybe Spezza can kind of, the veteran presence kind of help him. And I like that aspect of giving that fourth line a little bit of an offensive boost. But like I said, I think he's better off in the minors right now, and they kind of have their group to go with in the fourth line. And I think he could play a good part next year when you kind of need some entry level deals to start contributing in order for the cap situation to work itself out. But under 10 minutes, tough to get anything done in that time. So I'd revert back to getting Spezza in there and hoping for the best from the guys that you have.
Yeah, and it's hard to get a gauge when you only play 9 minutes and 5 seconds. I mean, it is tough, but at the same time, he did do a lot of good things that we saw, during his collegiate season, during his time with the U.S. Team USA at the Olympics, where he had that, that work ethic, the tenacity that he plays with, despite being a smaller guy. He is able to get it on the forecheck. Maybe not quite as shown as much as he would like to, but the promise was there. And, given the circumstance where he is a younger player, or he's a rookie, he's going to have to fight some time up, and it's hard to put him into the lineup where you can possibly throw in a more offensively talented player like a Nick Robertson, possibly a Matthew Knies, who has more of that upside. But to just see him play, I mean, it gives them an opportunity to see what he can do at the pro level. That was the main thing. They need bodies, they need contracts, and I read somewhere that I believe it was from Luke Fox, where Dubas purposely didn't go out and sign his AHL players on AHL contracts like Josh Hosang to make room for his top prospects like Knies, Abruzzese, and even Mikko Kakkonen, who was signed early on this week. So again, not too much to look forward to with Abruzzese, but he did some good things when he did play. Let's hope maybe that at some point, maybe that fourth line gets a couple extra minutes, because at some points you may need to rely on them. It's hard to not say that the top lines won't get going, because they are starting to produce right now. Third line's on a roll. You want to try and get that fourth line going. And with the fact that they scored, Wayne Simmons scored a goal against the Philadelphia Flyers, maybe try and get that, restore that faith back and play him an extra 2 minutes a game. So we'll see what happens. If he gets into more games, great. If not, then there's always the Marlies, where he's able to continue to develop. And
I think this is the time to do it, right? You try him out a couple games, maybe give him a week. And I think next game I would try a line of Spezza, Abruzzese, and Blackwell. I like that. I think they could provide some speed, and they're all a little bit more skilled rather than going with the heavier, more physical guy. So I think that would be something you could kind of look forward to and see if they can, spark something, because they all have kind of that offensive flair to them, to some extent. So it's something I would look to do.
Definitely a lot of decisions of what they're going to do, because the bad thing is they have great depth. The good thing is they have great depth. So it's a kind of catch-22 situation where you don't know who to play, because even right now, Wayne Simmons is playing extremely well after a couple stints when he was a healthy scratch. So, it's a good problem to have. It's just, whoever's the best, you just got to throw together. And that's where Keith is at this point, but it's a good problem to have. So going to be interesting to see how the lineups manage later on during the stretch. Now, to recap the show, this week's episode is always brought to you by morningskate.io, a daily newsletter brought to your inbox. When you sign up with your email, you get the daily news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, etc. from the Hockey Writers writing crew. Great staff, great content. You will not regret signing up with it. It's going to be jam-packed with great information and hockey fun. Now, moving on to the second half of our show. This was an eventful week for the Maple Leafs. After a 4-2 loss to the Montreal Canadiens, again, questions started to circulate about, their play against bottom tier teams. Were they able to be consistent or not? And they had to try and turn the tides against some of the top teams this week, where you were playing the top team in the Florida Panthers, a team chasing you in the Boston Bruins. And even though they're fighting for a playoff spot, the Winnipeg Jets are still a tough team to go up against. And this week was what we should have seen against teams like the Montreal Canadiens, like the Buffalo Sabres, like the Arizona Coyotes, where they were absolutely dominant. The whole entire week, in 4 games, including the one against the Philadelphia Flyers, 4 wins, all 5+ where they scored 5+ goals in those victories. 5-2 against the Panthers, 6-4 against the Bruins, 7-3 against the Jets, and 6-3 against the Flyers. Now, with all the comments and criticisms that they get against the bottom tier teams, they came and put their best foot forward against the best teams in the NHL. And Julian, is this the final straw, or is this a good reassurance that the Maple Leafs can handle the top teams in the NHL?
Well, yeah, that's what we said last week. And they said it depends in the playoffs which team we get to start the playoffs to see how far they're going to go. So they, like we said, they're capable of beating any team as long as they're playing at their best, which they were for those games. And that's them playing up to their opponent and not taking them for granted, which is something they always struggle with. Like you said, you can imagine where we'd be if they beat some of those lower tiered teams in the standings. We'd almost be, you drop maybe 5 games to lower tier teams. Those are points where you're probably first in this division right now, which is crazy to think. So, they have a couple more games, tough games ahead. They get the Panthers and the Lightning again away from home. So those will be statement games again. And I just think that they have to continue to, get pucks to the net. They have Campbell back now, so that'll be a big boost for them. And, the ability to get, the third line's going, but now we're getting that Tavares, the secondary is going. Tavares and Nylander are starting to get there. That's what's the kind of the difference of being able to score all these goals, because it's not one line doing all the work. So it's good to see those guys finally get going. And as long as the top 6 is going and you're getting contributions from, special teams, the power play has been really good. Shorthanded, they've been, going off, scoring a bunch of shorthanded goals. So it's not only, defending, it's always thinking of that offensive mindset, getting pucks to the net and getting good shots on goal, and it's paying off. So they have to continue to keep scoring at this pace. And if, as long as they can do that, and these games against the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning will be good ones to watch.
Yeah. You mentioned how they score goals just by committee, and you know that they're one of the top offensive teams of this league, given where they're at with the goal scoring. 4 players with 20+ goals, one with 50 already in Auston Matthews, of course, Mitch Marner reaching up there, William Nylander's having a career season. And you mentioned the defense too. They're getting, I don't want to say they're getting the best defense, because there are some lapses, and we saw that against the Philadelphia Flyers. But at certain times when they're called upon to make a block, box players out, provide that steady and calming presence that they were supposed to have early on in the season, they're doing that. And I mean, just looking at the deadline acquisitions in Ilya Lyubushkin and Mark Giordano, you see a difference in terms of their mentality, in terms of being a little bit more physical, being more engaged, and getting in and taking initiative to getting in the shooting lanes and sacrificing the body. And I think that during this whole week, that was the main sticking factor for me. You're getting everyone, and even in that game against the Boston Bruins, where you were down to 4 defensemen, and you still play lights out defense against a top tier team and an offense that, fires on all cylinders, just like the Maple Leafs. it's a great sign that the blue line is very committed. The blue line is resilient, and even this team overall, that right now when they're at their best, they are one of the best in this league, and there is no doubt about that.
And they're getting that consistency, right? Like for the most part in each of these games, they've came out of the gate well. They've maintained their emotion. They've continued to, stick to their game plan. And all of these games, even with Winnipeg, they're down 2-0 and they still managed to come back and win. And that's the thing with this team. They have the offensive firepower to be in any game, no matter what the score is, whether they're down 3-0 or down by 3 goals. Like they have the personnel to be able to come back into a game. And it's just one goal goes straight to their legs and they're able to turn the tide very fast, right? And switch their mindset almost to offense mode and be able to get the ball rolling. So they're never really out of a game and they've been playing really well right now. So you can't really complain. And they put a lot of the rumors and doubts in people to rest in this last little stretch.
And a perfect example of that is against the Flyers where, Pierre Engvall scored that shorthanded goal. Philadelphia answers back with the goal. And then you see 2 more answered back with Morgan Riley and John Tavares scoring with that snipe as well. So, the resilience of this team right now is something that we didn't quite see in the past, especially down the stretch last season. You saw them at their best, but they weren't resilient in terms of tough game situations. They were in a tough game against the Florida Panthers. They were in a tougher situation against the Bruins. The emotions were high after the first game against the Winnipeg Jets. They battled back despite a very poor defensive first period and even defensive lapses against the Flyers. So the fact that I think they have that going for them right now is going to be very telling down the stretch. And if you go in with a good mindset and with this mentality, who's to say that they can't beat a Tampa Bay or Florida or even Carolina or Boston in the playoffs if they maintain this attitude and this mentality, because it's far different from what it was the previous season. Moving over back to some prospect news, as we mentioned, Abruzzese made his debut, but as we also talked about, Matthew Knies is one player that we've been focusing on quite a bit on the show and even Maple Leafs or Leafs Nation in general. Him and the University of Minnesota Gophers are heading to the Frozen Four, which is slated to happen the weekend of April 7th to 9th. In the last week, we saw Matthew Knies at his best in game-breaking dire situations. And one clip before they went into the game that vaulted them into the Frozen Four, where they won 3-0, they were down. They were down in their previous game. Matthew Knies came back and he scored to tie the game up, and then Ben Myers won it at overtime. And again, we talked about this before about him possibly joining the Maple Leafs. Julian. Is Matthew Knies going to be the real deal for them down the stretch? I know we had needed lower expectations that he's going to be joining the top 6 right away, but does he have the skill set, the size, the body, the physicality to join this team right away and make a significant impact post Frozen Four, depending on the outcome of what happens in this tournament?
Well, yeah, I think it works in his favor that he's been playing so well for the last couple games too. So, even though you jump from a different stage to another, the NCAA to, the NHL, like when you're playing that good, you have that confidence and that kind of swagger. So I think that would kind of work in his favor. But, I guess there's no harm in trying them in the lineup as long as you, like you said, tamper your expectations, because like we said, this is already a deep team and you need a guy that's going to be, thrown in there and start contributing, because otherwise you're better off going with the veterans that you kind of trust, right? So unless he's going to give you something that none of those fourth liners right now are giving you, and, maybe try him on the fourth line, bump him up, give him some opportunities and looks on, the second power play to use those offensive skills that he has, or put him with that Tavares line. They have the luxury of being able to kind of plug people in here. And I'm sure we'll see him once he's done with with his NCAA tournament there. But I'm gonna just hold my expectations for him, just because I don't want to put too much pressure or expect so much from him that because like I said, you guys know where I stand, and it's just kind of letting them develop. And especially with the depth that we have, it's hard to get guys in the lineup as it is, right? So unless he's going to give you something that none of the other guys are giving you in terms of offense or maybe contribution somewhere else in the game, then I would just kind of give him a test run and then send him down to the minors and roll with what you have in the NHL level right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's important to think, development is always going to be key, whether it's at the AHL or NHL level. In a Q&A that he did with Mark Masters, he mentioned that in one aspect that his game has grown is his physicality. And we've seen some booming hits from him where I mentioned previously before that he has that size, the physicality that can be a factor on a fourth line, but still have that skill with the soft hands, the speed, and the shot that he possesses. So the fact that he's got that whole package right now shows that no matter where he is in the lineup, I think it's going to work out well for him. But then again, expectations, he is going to be a 19, 20-year-old player coming into the NHL just out of the NCAA. That's a lot to take in, no matter who you are. And even so, in that Q&A with Mark Masters, he said that, he's just focusing on this game right now, or this tournament. Big stage for him to continue to make a significant impact and improve his value as a top prospect for this Maple Leafs team. And I mentioned that goal that he scored to tie the game up. Kyle Dubas was in attendance. So, like I said, scoring clutch goals in a clutch situation with your GM in the building. I think, he might be ready for that situation, or in those tough battles where the pressure is on him. And I think that that's one hurdle, especially for a young player, to get over and overcome, no matter what the situation is. All the pressure could be built up on you, and you rise to the occasion. And that's what he did. So I think, to me, if he's able to elevate that or bring that aspect into this team during the playoffs, hey, if he can score clutch goals at the NCAA, again, different level, may translate over here. But then again, anything is possible. That is it for this episode of the Maple Leafs Lounge. Thank you for tuning in. As always, once again, be sure to sign up for morningskate.io, the daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday from the Hockey Writers, jam-packed with all the latest news, rumors, info, history, quizzes, everything regarding the NHL from our top tier Hockey Writers writing staff. Submit or enter your email in the link below. You will not regret it. It is great content coming to you every single day of the week. Once again, for Julian Mongillo, I'm Peter Baracchini, and we'll see you all next week on the Maple Leafs Lounge.